boats, and they'd been fishing all night. And Yeshua called out to them, "Come on, follow me." And so they brought their boats up to the shore. They took care of their nets. They're fishermen. They have a fishing company. It says that they were in the same company together. For James and John were the sons of Zebedee. Maybe they called it the Sons of Zebedee Fishing Company. I don't know. But it also calls James and John Boanerges, the sons of thunder, which probably indicates they ate a lot of hummus. Anyway, this is just biblical research, okay? And so they brought the boats up on the shore, they took care of the nets, and they followed Yeshua, and he is basically telling them it's time to get ready for the Sabbath. Because they've been fishing all night. He said, "Come on, follow me." So they go to his house, they spend the night, the next morning they are in the synagogue at Capernaum. There's a man who is possessed with demons. Yeshua casts the demons out of him, makes a big scene in the synagogue, and then afterward goes over to Peter's house where Peter's mother-in-law is sick. Yeshua heals Peter's mother-in-law, and it says she ministers to them. Now, some people said, this is why Peter denied the Lord 3 times, because he healed his mother-in-law, but I have a wonderful mother-in-law. I don't think that is true at all. And some of you are just way too religious. And it says that when the sun set at the end of the Sabbath, they brought multitudes to him, and he healed them all. And as many as touched the hem of his garment were made whole. Now, when it says the hem of his garment, it's not talking about this here. It's talking about this here. At Mount Sinai, we were told to put a fringe of blue thread on the corner of our garment to remind us to always to keep the commandments. And the prophet Malachi said when the true Messiah comes, he will have healing in the kanaf, in the wings of his garment, in the tzitzit of his garment. This, which is to remind us to keep the commandments, if we would take a hold of this portion of the garment of the true Messiah, that he would have healing in this. That's why the people were taking a hold of this, because the prophet said that when the true Messiah comes, this is what you do. He will remind us to keep the Torah, and in so doing, that's where our healing will come from, and he will heal us. And so we see that they brought all these people to him, he healed them all, and instead of going to his house, he then got out of the city, and then he went up into the hills of Bethsaida and got away from everyone. He didn't want everyone to know where he lived. It was a multitude thronging him. He is not going to let all these people know where he lives, so he goes up into the hill country and he's gone. Vanishes for another week. And then the next week he comes back along the Sea of Galilee, and this time he has a multitude in tow with him as he's walking along the beach. And there it says that Peter and John, Andrew and James were outside of their boats on the shore, and the King James says washing their nets. Now this is a real obsessive compulsive fishermen washing their nets like they didn't get wet enough the night before. No, they were mending their nets. They were getting their nets in order. They were outside of their boats, and they were getting their nets in order. And Yeshua came along with this multitude of people, and he went up to Peter and said, "Push out from the shore and let me speak with these people." So he got in Peter's boat. Peter pushed off and got out to where Yeshua's voice would then go across the water to where he could speak to everyone. And then when he was finished, he said, "Okay, Peter, now let me off. Get your nets, put them back in the boat, and go out into the deep and cast your nets out." And Peter argued with him. You know, it could have gone on for a while. Like, "Excuse me, I'm a fisherman. I know what it takes to catch fish. You don't throw your nets out in the daytime. The fish can see your nets. We worked all night. We didn't catch anything, and we're not about to catch anything now." And Yeshua insisted. He said, "Okay, all right, all right." And so he took the net, just one. Yeshua had said, take your nets out. He's not going to follow through all the way. Just took one net out. He went out, he cast the net out, he was bringing it in, and all of a sudden, he had a school of fish that he had never seen in his life before. He hollered to James and John, get your boat out here right now. It says that the net began to break. They filled both of these boats to overflowing. Now, I have friends that have attempted to make their living as fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. And when these men brought in those two boats to overflowing, they had a larger take than what you would normally get in an entire season of fishing. A whole year would go by and you would not get as many fish as they had in that one haul. They could take it to the market, they could sell it, pay off their oil heating bill with their oil lamps and all that, and then it says now they forsook their nets and followed Yeshua. Up until now, these men have families, they have businesses, they are taking care of business. It's only at this moment that they finally forsake their nets and they never go back to fishing again until one fruitless night after the resurrection in which Peter tries his hand at it once again. See, we have had so many stories played out in our minds that Yeshua is walking along the shore and he sees these boats out there. Follow me. Yes, Master, we will follow you. Like these people just came out of zombie land. No, they have known Yeshua for months. They watched him walk out of the wilderness as John the Baptist says, behold the Lamb of God, which takes away the sin of the world. They spent the night with him that night. They have been with him for months now. And finally he's saying, okay, leave it all, boys. I want you to follow me. I will teach you to be fishers of men. And they forsook their nets at the very moment that they could afford to take care of all of their bills. And they never went back again. Now, within just a few days, they meet Matthew, a Levite, who is supposed to teach the Word of God. What is he doing instead? He is at a toll booth. The Romans in that area had the whole area divided up, and when you wanted to move from one section of the Decapolis to another, you had to pay a toll at a booth, and this Levite, Matthew, was sitting there collecting taxes for a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit corporation. And Yeshua said, I'm going to your house to eat. And he did, and I believe the timing of this was Rosh Chodesh, dinner at Matthew's, and Matthew never went back to work again for the rest of his life. He began following Yeshua in teaching. And it was the very next week that Matthew then begins his account in which he details Matthew chapter 5 and begins the Sermon on the Mount. That's when Matthew begins the day-by-day documenting of Yeshua's life, even though he's given much information before concerning his birth, concerning Herod, all these things that he wasn't there for, but yet he documented these things, but now he is there to document every word as Yeshua lays down the rules of the kingdom of heaven. And who better to do it than a Levite, a scribe by trade. And so now, after that period of time, Yeshua is going around teaching, and we come to, I have to say what happens here. Yeshua then selects 12 apostles. Sent ones. But he doesn't send them anywhere. They hang around with him as he teaches and ministers for the next 2 weeks. And then after that, he then sends them out for about a 7-week period of time in which he sends them out in teams of 2. 6 teams of 2. He sends them out and he goes behind them. It teaches in the cities where they go. Now, this is important because during this 7 weeks, we do not see what Yeshua is doing on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis. There are only 3 records that are even recorded during this 7-week period of time. Why? Because everyone is busy. They're scattered. They're out there working. And so we're not seeing everything that's going on day by day. And I'm telling you, I'm just hitting the high points at this point. But during the next 7 weeks, we are going to see them finally come back together at the Galilee again. Now, it is the last week of the 6th month. And Yeshua has told all of his disciples to get back together in the Galilee at this time. See, we tell the date by the moon. And as the moon begins to wane, we know that when the moon disappears and the first sliver of the next moon appears, it is the Day of Trumpets. At that moment, we have got 15 days to have all the harvest done, all of our work done, have our tithe in our hand, go up to Jerusalem and be building our Sukkah 15 days later. So this is an extremely busy time of year. Yeshua is up in the Galilee, the rest of the disciples come together, and it is here at the last week that Yeshua and his disciples find out that John has been executed. He's been beheaded. These people had been with Yeshua for 3 days, and they have eaten nothing. And so now we come to the 28th day of the month, and this is the moment of the feeding of the 5,000. This is 18 days before the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, and this is where it gets very important. Because this is the one miracle that is recorded in all 4 of the Gospels, and this is when it takes place. This is John chapter 6, in which it details this. And, of course, it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke as well. But I'm just going to take you through John chapter 6 for just a moment on this, okay? Because it says that Yeshua, his heart was heavy, as well as his disciples, when they find out that John has been executed. And yet there are all these thousands of people that have been following him, and so he knows he has to take care of them. And so then he challenges Philip on where should we get some bread that these may eat. And so what happens is he feeds 5,000 men, plus women and children, with leavened barley loaves. And this is what he does at this particular point in time. After he feeds the people, he sends his disciples to the boat so they can begin crossing the Kinneret, because they are somewhere over in this area here. They are then going to be crossing the Kinneret. Yeshua waits until after sunset, and he then crosses the Kinneret on foot, walking on the water, and joins up with the disciples in the boat. Then, by the next morning, they are in Gennesaret, and that's where it says that multitudes are healed the following morning. So we have crossing at night, Gennesaret, the crowds are healed, and it is Friday. Now they go up about 2 miles, walking up the shoreline to get to Capernaum, and when they get to Capernaum, they stay at Yeshua's place again, and the next morning they are in the synagogue, John chapter 6, and Yeshua is teaching on the last day and the resurrection. Over and over and over, read John 6, in the last day and the resurrection. Why is he teaching on the last day and the resurrection in the synagogue? Because when the sun sets, it is going to be the Day of Trumpets. The theme of the Day of Trumpets is the last day and the resurrection. When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, the dead are raised, the righteous are rewarded. That has been the theme throughout all of history. And every year, the Day of Trumpets occurs on a day and hour that no one knows. So, Yeshua is teaching a multitude in the synagogue at Capernaum, and this is still John chapter 6. And so when the sun sets, and this is an older chart before while I was doing the calculations, the new moon appeared 3% illuminated, 14 degrees above the horizon. It was the Day of Trumpets at that particular point in time. Now, people continued to follow Yeshua, and now, on the 3rd day of the month, that is when he feeds another group of men, 4,000 men, plus women and children. And when he feeds them, that is when we have a major incident that takes place. Scribes and Pharisees came from Jerusalem to the Galilee, saying unto Yeshua, Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread? What are we talking about here? What are these disciples that are not doing the tradition of the elders, that are transgressing the tradition of the elders, not washing their hands before they eat bread?